What's going on, guys? I am back today with something a little different than usual. We are going to go through the Olympia qualified competitors and pick out my top 10 picks for the 2024 Olympia. Now, I want to start by saying this is my personal list of picks. My critiques are just what I kind of favor personally. It's not an objective list. I think a lot of people will probably disagree with certain components of my list for various reasons. But for my taste, this is what my top 10 is going to be and my prediction for the Olympia. Now, I've made a couple predictions out there before already, but this is going to be my final picks. These are my final locked in lists since we are under 2 weeks out from the show. I mean, it is coming up quick. I think we're like 11 days out, 10, no, 11 or 12. It's soon, basically. So, starting off here, we're just going to go through and get the most recent updates I possibly can from every single athlete. And we are going to start with none other than the current Mr. Olympia, Derek Lunsford. So, as I go through these guys, I'll kind of go through them in my order unless I specify otherwise. Again, I'm only going to do the top 10, but I think that the top 10 this year, probably one of the most competitive fields we've seen in a long time on the Olympia stage. I mean, the depth of talent at this year's show is awesome. And I'm really excited to see that and see how it plays out because there's just a lot of situations where it's like if one guy comes in slightly off, the guy who's right behind him could come in 3 spots ahead. Like there's a lot of variability with these guys this year, and I love seeing that because it is very competitive. So again, without further ado, starting with Derek. Derek's most recent update. I don't have a lot to say on his current shape. I mean, he's looking great, but I guess to kind of give some background, I personally think Hadi won last year. I do. I'm on Team Hadi from last year. That being said, I don't think Derek was undeserving of it. I think he's got a freakishly insane physique. And I think one thing that will put Derek as the most likely contender and who I'm going to be picking for first place this year, back to back, is his ceiling. He has made some massive improvements in the offseason just looking at his most recent few updates. I mean, his chest is looking a lot better, and I think that's one area I've critiqued him on very heavily in the past. And while I still don't think it compares to Hadi, I do think it is definitely improved. And if he won last year and he made improvements, what's to stop him this year? The only reason I say that is I think his biggest direct competitor this year is going to be Hadi. And I don't think Hadi has much more room to improve. And how can I put this? We've probably seen the best version of Hadi that we're going to see. I don't know which one that is. Some people will say it was his, I think, Vancouver showing. Some people will say it was this most recent Arnold. Whatever you think Hadi's best was, we've probably seen it already. I don't think we have seen or will be seeing a new best from Hadi. Derek, on the other hand, has a ton of runway for improvement over the rest of his career. And again, leading into the show this year. So I really think that it is Derek's show to lose. And even though I disagree with last year's decision, I think he's going to walk away with it this year. Now, that puts Derek in my number 1 spot. We are going to move on to my number 2 spot, which is Hadi. There he is. Hadi in my number 2. And basically, for all of the reasons I just said. I mean, let's find his most recent update here. He just looks as insane as ever. I mean, Hadi just brings something to the stage that is so complete. Front to back, side to front. Like every aspect of Hadi is well-rounded and just appealing and pleasing to the eye. The guy's physique is crazy. But again, I think that running off the momentum he had last year, Derek is going to be able to outpace Hadi in terms of improvements going into this year. And using that momentum plus improvements he has made will just bump Hadi out of the contention for first place. I shouldn't say out of contention, but out of the first place spot. I see Hadi still, though, in second when it comes to the entire field that we're looking at for this top 10. Now, that's pretty standard, right? I think everyone is kind of floating between Samson, Hadi, Derek in some way, shape, or form to be your top three. This is where my first off track pick comes into play. So, first is Derek, second is Hadi. Third, I am going to go with Andrew. Andrew jacked. Actually, let's just look at his Texas pictures. I think it's going to be like 50-50. 50% of people who see this will probably agree with me. 50% will probably say I'm smoking fucking crack. I think, though, that looking at this version of Andrew that you see here on screen, to me, this is one of, if not the single best physique from an aesthetic perspective in the current Olympia lineup. It's insane. I mean, this is crazy to me. He looks insane. The issues I see with him potentially having, or that he could potentially have, would just be that conditioning from the back and what you see here, his side shots. He doesn't know how to pose them. If he improves those, then I see him taking third, genuinely. And the reason I put him ahead of Samson is that I think Samson and Andrew have very similar physiques in terms of their structure, their size, the space they occupy on stage. But to me, Andrew takes the physique that Samson has and makes it just more aesthetically and visually appealing. Not to say Samson's is not, but there's just something about Andrew's physique that is just every single cut on him just looks perfect. And I think that 100% Samson and 100% Andrew, if they both come in perfect, it would be a tough battle for him to win, but I do genuinely think he could do it. And I think that he will improve over what we see here from Texas. Samson, I know we just recently got a showing of him. We'll go to that in a moment. I just think that him dialing in his presentation for the Olympia is going to be the biggest challenge for him. Speaking again about Samson. But I think Andrew has more motivation right now to really dial it in, coming off of this win and knowing what he needs to improve. That's just my thoughts on it. So it could go either way for that third place spot, but I really honestly see Andrew sneaking into the top three and taking third. It's not a win for him yet, but if he just polishes this physique, adds a little bit more mass, specifically in the back, fixes that posing, and then cleans up from the back in terms of his how lean he is from the back, I think Andrew could very easily be the next Mr. Olympia. Will it happen this year? No, I don't think so. But that being said, I have Andrew in third. So moving on to fourth, we have none other than his direct contender, in my opinion, Samson. Here is a stage shot. I believe it was France that Samson did this past weekend ahead of the Olympia. Man, he looks good. I mean, don't get me wrong. When I say Andrew is getting third and Samson's getting fourth, it's not because I'm counting Samson out or I think Samson is in some way, shape, or form way worse. But I still just have the edge to Andrew. Regardless of that, Samson looks insane. This is crazy looking. And he still has 2 weeks to go. I mean, he's got time to pull down a little bit more if he wants or needs, and then get everything dialed in perfectly. And I think that this show, for him, I mean, we know Samson just loves to compete. He's just a dude who is, his heart is in the sport. And I love that about Samson. But I think this show also most likely served as a good point for him to test how he and his wife were going to do things going into a show and how this was going to work out and what his look was going to be getting on stage ahead of the Olympia. Again, just a dry run. Now, you know, others might disagree with that. They have had plenty of shows together in the past, but I think that this is the show, this Olympia rather, that Samson is the most motivated to get 100% correct. And he wants to do everything within his power to make sure that he's dialed in for it. And based off what we're seeing from that show, from France here, man, he looks great. I mean, awesome. Again, I think it's going to be really close between him and Andrew, but I'm putting Samson in fourth, putting Andrew in third, and that's what I'm sticking with. Will I end up being completely wrong there? Potentially. Now, The dark horse of the 24 Olympia is Nick Walker. The reason I say this is that Nick is in a unique position. Obviously, he was out with that hamstring injury last year's Olympia. So this year, coming into the show, I think he has a lot to prove to himself and his direct fan base. But I think a lot of people are, not even considering Nick as being a high level contender. I don't want to say they've forgotten about him, but they're just kind of ruling him out of the top 3, 4, 5 spot. I'm putting him out of the top 3, top 4, but I'm not going to rule him out of the top 5. I think Nick will land squarely in 5th place. And I think a lot of that hinges upon not how he comes into the show from a condition perspective. I think we're going to probably see some of the best condition on Nick we've ever seen because, again, he does his best when he's kind of in a situation, he's faced with adversity. And with all these people counting him out, I think that we're going to see the most motivated Nick we've ever seen. But the big thing for me that still kind of depends or decides rather where his placement is going to end up is that abdomen, that midsection. I personally can't get past it when I see Nick's physique. I don't think I'll ever see him as a Mr. Olympia myself, but that's no hate to him. I just think that he has to nail that in order to be top 3. And unless he brings a really improved package over New York, in terms of the midsection only, again, I know his New York showing, he's already admitted things weren't perfect there, but in terms of the midsection specifically, if he doesn't do better than New York and just comes in about the same, I might even be putting him a little high. With, again, the depth of this field this year, I think it's anybody's game, but I think little things like that, or honestly for Nick, that's a relatively big thing. Those are the things that are going to make a huge difference this year. And I don't want to put Nick higher than 5th, but I also don't want to put him lower than that. I think 5th is squarely where Nick is going to end up. I wish we had a better update, but we don't really have any recent updates from him. There's some gym shots here. Obviously the one I just showed of him, with his legs, but no full physique update recently. In fact, I don't think the most recent one is very recent at all. Yeah, we've had nothing for a while, so he's playing it close to the chest. It looks like his last update was 8 weeks ago, so we've changed a lot since then. This is too old to go off of anything when we're doing comparisons for the other guys that are as recent as a week or 2 weeks. So anyway, that's where I'm putting Nick, 5th place. So far, my top 10 list in order: Derek, Hadi, Andrew, Samson, Nick. 6th place. This is a spot that I really had to do a lot of debating on to see who I wanted to put here. I think, and I'm sticking by this, after seeing this most recent update from yesterday, I'm going to put Hunter in 6th. I think, honestly, Hunter could be 5th, Nick could be 6th. In fact, you know what? I'm gonna do that. We're going to switch this up. We're going to put Hunter in 5th, and we're going to put Nick in 6th. I know I just said I'm not ruling Nick out of the top 5, but man, looking at Hunter here, he looks nuts. This is a great look for Hunter. I'll also say I was not impressed by Hunter at Italy. However, Italy's lighting, their live stream, the whole production was complete and total dog shit from everything I heard. I think that, again, this is obviously an outdoor lighting, perfect post-training pump kind of video of Hunter. But I think looking at this, he has all of the tools to be able to beat Nick and come in 5th. And yeah, I don't think there's much more to it than that. I think that that's something I debated about in my head a little bit. And honestly, I'm still debating if that's the right choice, if maybe I should put Nick back in 5th and Hunter in 6th. But Hunter's looking great. I mean, the dude has made some crazy improvements, and I know he's been very adamant that this offseason has been one of the best ever for him, just from a mental health perspective, because he got his gut health in check. He kind of got his mental in check. He seems to be kind of on a roll with things. So I'll keep it as is. And you know what? If I end up paying for it, whatever. We're going to say Hunter in fifth, Nick in sixth, just because I can't get over how insane this looks. He's looking good. Now, 7, 8, 9, and 10. These are really, really hard spots to fill out, but I'm going to try my best here. So at the 7th place spot, I think we are going to see, there he is, Martin. Now, I don't know when Martin's most recent update was. I think it's this one from 2 weeks ago. It's kind of a shit picture, really poor lighting. Can't really tell anything here, but I have Martin in 7th. I think Martin has a great physique. I think he proved that he can stand with the big dogs at New York. I mean, honestly, it was a very close show between him and Nick. Now, I know Nick was off, but still, I think Martin will be right up there with those guys. And I have him in 7th just because I think he needs size. He does. I think there's some posing improvements we could see from Martin as well. But overall, I think he's just very well-rounded. I mean, Martin's one of those guys who you give him 3, 4, 5 more years in the sport, maybe not even that long. Again, maybe three years. He could be fighting for the first place spot. He really could. Great physique on this guy. Love it. I'm still going to put him in 7th. Now, my 8th place pick. This is going to be one that's going to throw a lot of people off because it's probably not going to be on anybody else's list other than mine. But this dude has provided so much to the industry and is such a valuable asset to the bodybuilding industry as a whole. John Jewett. I hope nothing for the best for him with this Olympia, or in this Olympia, and I would love to see him place in the top 10. I think he would love that more than I would, but I would love to see it. And I am rooting for him, and I'm going to put him in 8th, honestly. Now, there's a whole discussion to have here. Again, I want to reiterate something I said at the beginning of this video. This is a personal list. This is not my objective analysis. This is my list on who I think will be top 10, okay? There's obviously personal bias involved here. There's my personal preferences and my own subjective judging, quote unquote, of the athletes in my own eye. So this isn't an objective list, okay? But with that being said, I think John has just, I mean, look at this comparison. You know, this is from 212 to open in a year. I mean, I think he says it in here. This is 20, I think he said 22 pounds of tissue or something. Yeah, 215 at the Atlanta Pro last year and 237 right now, right before the Olympia. So 22 pounds of tissue in a year. That's insane. I mean, he just looks absolutely gnarly here on the right. Like, obviously, this is the most recent one. I'm super excited to see what he does on stage because I think that he has all of the tools to be insane, with one exception. I think his chest is definitely lacking. But overall, I think that the biggest thing that John needs is just size. And I'm hoping to see him in 8th because of the symmetry, the conditioning, and what he has done already in terms of size since his last pro show even. But I don't know. I'm going to put him in 8th just because, again, I like John. I'm rooting for John. But there's a bit of a toss-up here. I shouldn't say a toss-up. A bit of a wild card. That wild card is going to be my, what am I on now? 9th place pick? Yes, my 9th place pick. And I can't believe I'm putting this person in 9th. Brandon Curry. Now, we don't have any recent updates of Brandon, unfortunately. I think we have maybe a training video here, and that's it. He's playing it close to the chest in the same way that Nick is. But it feels kind of insane to put a former Mr. Olympia in 9th place, especially when last year he placed, 4th, I think? I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not counting Brandon out, but part of me just thinks he's on his way out. You know, I think he's nearing the end of his career, and kind of we've seen the best Brandon we're going to see, in my opinion. Same kind of thing I think we've seen with Hadi, but Brandon is a little closer to being fully out the door than Hadi is. Obviously, I think Hadi's got quite a bit of time he's going to stay in this. Again, Brandon, though, great physique. It feels crazy putting him in ninth, but I just don't see any other place for him this year with how the field looks. Now, if you wanted me to be a little bit more objective, sure, you could say I'd put him in eighth and give John ninth or 10th or something else. But again, I'm rooting for who I'm rooting for. And I think that Brandon in ninth place is probably pretty reasonable. He's still top 10. And you have to remember, with all these things, I'm saying, they're only getting ninth, they're only 10th. But it's, at the end of the day, the ninth or 10th best bodybuilder in the entire world. So I'm not counting him out, okay? He's still in the top 10. I'm going to give him ninth. Now, my 10th place pick. This was actually the hardest pick, I think. Well, kind of. It would have been the hardest pick if half the guys who were able to do the show had showed up or able to show up. Because I don't think Beirut is going to be able to show up. I think he's got visa issues. I don't think that Nathan is going to be able to show up for the same reason. He just can't get into the U.S. Who else was on the list? I think there was someone else who... Oh, Tonio. Tonio had to pull out, I think, or decided to pull out, I believe. So, I mean, if those three were in this, holy shit, my top 10 would look probably pretty fucking different. Unfortunately, they aren't. But I think 10th place, William Bonac. I think... This man, and let's see, this is an old update here. See if we can get a recent update. Yeah, here we go. This is from a week ago. He's looking good. I mean, I think that, since his prime, he has kind of downsized a bit. I think that he's just one of those guys who's, I don't know if I want to say near end of career because he's hopping back into it, but he's not at the peak of his career anymore. So I'm going to put him in 10th. But I think it's a very solid 10th, especially, again, considering the depth of all of the field at the competition this year and the level of the other competitors. But, yeah, I still have to go with 10th here. I do. Now, a couple wild cards, I keep saying that. Wild cards, maybe not the right term, but a couple of other guys who I think could make a big splash here and potentially shock some people would be Akeem. Again, I think his conditioning is going to be critical for him, but Akeem could show up and do a just insane job. Bruno was looking good. I don't really have him in top 10, but he could maybe push Bonac for that 10th place spot, potentially. And then the one guy who I'm really kind of counting out over everybody else is Raphael. And honestly, it's not that I have anything against him or that I don't like his physique or I think other people are inherently better. I just don't know where to place him. He's one of those guys where I like, if he has made big improvements and he comes in 100%, he could be as high as like 6th or 7th. But if he just kind of, comes in at his standard, hasn't really made improvements, is, just kind of where he has been, he might be as far down as like 12th in this lineup. It's really hard to say. And that's something that goes for, again, pretty much everybody in this whole field here. There's just so many good competitors this year that any one person coming in 100% or coming in off 5% could switch up these rankings by 3 positions. It could be hugely, hugely impactful. So we're just going to have to wait and see. We've got, like I said, less than 2 weeks now. Those are my final picks. I'll run through them again. Top 10, Derek, Hadi, Andrew, Sampson, Hunter, Nick, Martin, John Jewett, Brandon Curry, and William Bonac. That is my top 10 for this year. We'll see how it plays out. I'm excited. It's going to be a great show. Really looking forward to it. As always, guys, I will follow up on this video after the Olympia to kind of give my thoughts and give a review. So that will be coming here in just a couple of weeks. Oh, also, I almost forgot. Put your picks, put your top 10 down below. Let's see who gets it right. I hope you guys have a great Olympia this year. I hope everyone's looking forward to watching it. And until next time, take it easy.